Welcome to Virtually Minded. I'm your host, Sarah Garnham, and I'm a virtual assistant working with best-selling authors and small businesses, helping them to manage their time so that they can get on with what they do best. Along the way, I've learnt so much from all of my clients, so myself, my clients, and other inspirational guests will be here to share all of these tips, knowledge, and advice with you. So tune in right now and get your week off to a great start. Hello everybody and welcome to episode 6 of Virtually Minded. Thank you so much to everybody who has been tuning in to my episodes and for giving me the motivation to continue and create more episodes and to bring on more inspirational guests. Last week we were joined again by my husband Jamie, and we'd been putting some new routines and ideas into place within our own home to see if we could boost the morale and really create a great sort of home learning environment for our daughter. And I'm really glad that some of you have managed to take some of these ideas on board and put them into your own lives. So thank you again for your feedback. So this week I'm going to be airing an interview with a lady called Rosalyn Kahn. We recorded a fantastic interview together a couple of weeks ago, and I'm so excited to bring that to you today. Rosalyn is an amazing lady with such a great history. She is a TED talker, so these are inspirational talks that take place all over the world, and she's actually done 3 of them, and she'll tell you all about what they are and what it takes to be a TED talker. She's also a professor at a college in LA, and she's a coach for public speaking as well, so she's got some fantastic insights into that and some great experience behind her. I won't tell you too much about Rosalyn because I'm going to put you straight over to the interview right now, and I really hope you enjoy it. Hi Rosalyn, and welcome to Virtually Minded. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me come from all the way from Southern California all the way over to England. It's such an honor and privilege. My first time in English on the podcast. So congratulations. Woohoo!
Oh, brilliant. Oh, I'm so excited. This is your first experience of having an English podcast. That's brilliant. And you're the first American guest that I've had on so far. So
wow. Well, I am really quite impressed by the artist that you have, brought before, of the lady with infertility and the amazing photographer. So I'm excited for your questions and to see what we can learn about one another.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's brilliant because, of course, you can ask me questions as well, and we'll just have a great conversation about everything that you've been putting out there. And I'm really excited for people to learn more about you. I'm kind of keeping it not a secret, but I've been giving dribs and drabs of information to friends and listeners about what they can kind of expect. But I think people are going to be pretty wowed by what you've done. So, Rosalyn, let's start and tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, most people probably don't know me over in England, but I am a TEDx speaker. I've given 3 TED Talks. A lot of them were oriented to children, and I know a lot of people in England are having problems in today's time, so they'd probably be interested in them. One of them is called Language Comes to Life, and it's about taking my college and high college students to the theater and how that changed the way that they learn the English language. And it was really a beautiful story. We had watched the film of 12 Angry Men, and we had watched it in class so that when they got to the theater, they'd have an understanding of what was going on. And because class only goes an hour and a half or whatever it was, they didn't have time. So they wanted to go see the end so that they knew what the story was really all about. Yeah. And the video is heartwarming. I'm still in contact with one of the ladies in the class who I had my students do volunteer work. It was called Service Learning. And she went to a center that was next door that gave sack lunches and Bibles to all these people. And she said, never in my life have I learned so much about so many different people. And she later went on to get a scholarship that I'd written on her behalf and went out and did some work with, labor organizing. She was an artist. Now she's gone back to real estate school and she's a professional chess player.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite an amazing story. And you'll see her in the video. And the second speech was called Coming Around the Curve on My Battle with Scoliosis. And it's how I became a more compassionate human being. And so I really identify with people who've had struggles of adversity and difficulties, you know, just like your fellow author who had the problems of infertility. It's anybody who has a problem. We have this bond when we've gone through one of these experiences. We can say we understand.
It gives you
Um,
that empathy, doesn't it? That
it,
newfound
it's
empathy.
it really does. And then the third one was called Breaking Cultural Barriers, and how everyone can be the change agent of the world. And the story talks about three ordinary people, a woman from the women's rights movement. There was a movie done about her, Rosa Parks, and the Australian rower, and how he was just standing up for what he had wanted to believe. And they're on my webpage, which is rosalynkahn.com. The one that has the most views, about 3,000 people have seen it, is the one that's Language Comes to Life, about taking the students to the theater. I'm also an author based on the TED experience. I coach some people in the TED world, and some of those people are in this book on A Message for Tomorrow's Leaders. But the books I wrote were Random Acts of Kindness or Change in the World. And it's one of the things that I'd recommend to people. I was in a BNI meeting this morning, and she said, please, in this time of difficulty and hardship, I want you to begin every day saying how lucky I am to be here and how I will do this. And I have this opportunity and I have this choice. And they say if we do gratitude each and every day, and we begin in that way, we can help overcome the grief and the strife that we realize. I mean, perfect example. I got up this morning and I thought I had a podcast in Italy, India, and my phone was just going round and round, and my computer looked like it had a virus. And
Oh no.
I got on early and I said, oh my God. And I went back to bed and I'm like, God, please, please, God, please, God, please, God, please, God. And when I got back, I remembered, you know, there's this full safe thing that if you turn things off, they're not as bad as you think they are. So when I turned off the phone and restarted, it miraculously worked.
See,
When
that's
I
the
turned off
first
the
thing, isn't
computer,
it? Try
it's,
rebooting it. Is what was what IT professionals always say if you call upon them, don't they? Have you tried
yep.
rebooting it?
Have you tried rebooting it? And so, you know, you restarted and you re-get it going. And so that was the miracle of what makes it happen. It's like whenever you call the IT person, you've always kind of figured it out beforehand.
Yeah.
But you know, so we did get onto that. But this last book here is called A Message for Tomorrow's Leaders. And it was inspired by the academics at the school who said that before the pandemic hit, smartly so, how was it that we keep the minorities in the classroom? And that was the premise that inspired me to bring all sorts of wide variety of different backgrounds and different professionals. It can almost be a career guidance book
Okay.
of what career you want to go into and how to make sense out of life. And it ended up, I asked people 3 questions. What's their name? What's their profession? Um, what is it that they would recommend about the protest? What they would recommend about the riots? Did they have a right or a wrong place? And the wisdom that came through, I want to tell you, when I read through the complete book just to make sure, I was filled with this, wow, this is really beautiful.
Oh wow.
I mean, I never imagined when I put this together, the wealth of information in there.
Yeah.
And it has a best-selling author, Ken Unger, who is the doctor of soul. He helps people who are addicted to opioid drugs
Okay.
and helps them through counseling to go ahead and overcome those adversities. There's TEDx organizers that I've worked with, a guy by the name of John K. Bates, who works with a lot of professionals on big stages, and Kat Haber, who I interviewed. I worked with a lady whose name was Ilian Gilad, and she was on part of the Olympics, and I had coached her on her TED stage And when she had her fourth one to do and her coach wasn't working out, she said, Rosalyn, they've got this guy and he just doesn't have time. Can you help me? And it was so incredible to go up to Alaska
Oh, wow.
and
Yeah.
to just see the beauty of this beautiful island and to be there.
And that's fantastic that she called upon you because of obviously she got to know you and your expertise and things like that. And can you, I was just going to say, can you explain a little bit about the background of TEDx talks? Because I love them. I think they're absolutely incredible, the premise behind them. But as you know, the first person who has been a TEDx speaker that I've had on here, I'd love for you to give
Wow.
your insight into kind of what the ethos is behind them.
Well, basically the messages behind it is they want a new message. You know, a lot of people try and come with books or modalities that they've done and they go, I gotta get this out there. I gotta get this out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes the look is for the people who haven't done that. They have a really unique message. And if you think back about the stories that I shared about language comes to life, you know, when I went and I, I'll say I interviewed or I went to a TED organizer's event. Because when I went to my first event, I was in Toastmasters for a number of years. I've taught for, at the time, it was 15 years. And when I entered that meeting, I was working as an organizer doing the helping the logistics and helping set up the background. And when I went to this event, I met this mentor of mine. His name was John Bates. And he and I just became amazing friends. And so he had done this event and he was teaching people there's a difference between professional speaking
Yeah.
and TED speaking.
Okay.
And he said, you know, you've got to have this organization and you've got to have the structure, but in TED, it's got to be beyond that. You've got to make it literally come to life
Yeah.
and highly animated. And he and I became great friends. So when the TED event, I get up in that meeting and I said, hi, my name's Rosalyn. I've been teaching public speaking for the last 13 years, and I'm just here to learn.
Wow. That's amazing.
And when I walked out the hall to go to the bathroom break, this lady named Kat Haber came up to me, who's a big environmentalist, big change advocate of what we can do in our environments to help out humanity. She has this thing that she doesn't go to the brightest and the greatest places in the world, but she goes to the small communities because it's the small farmers and the small individual people that have the biggest possibility of changing our global environment and making it safe for everyone. And she said, I'd like to talk to you. I have some people that I think that you could work with. And I'm bad at names, but the first person she introduced me to was a person who worked on huge disasters in the world where people who'd been through really traumatic experience of war and violence and things like that. And the children had been raped and were going through post-traumatic stress. And she said, I think this would be a wonderful person for you to work with. And she and I worked, well, I began working with this person, but unfortunately, our schedules didn't work. But it was just such an incredible story. The next lady I said, you know, had been on the news on the Olympics, and her story was this. She always had a parent who told her that she wasn't good enough and washed her mouth with soap and water and just said you shouldn't say these things, and was a real downer on her life. And she was over in, I want to call it France or Europe, and she just finished the Olympics and she'd gone to this mixer, and it was New Year's Eve, and she met this guy with this yucky old clothes, and he handed her this crinkled piece of paper and he said, take this. And she undoes it and she looks at what's on the paper, and it's a message that says, go to this train station on this day and enter this train.
Okay.
She's like, what's this all about? And so she goes on the train and the door's about to close. And as it goes on the last close, she goes on and she gets this intuitive message that tells her to start singing. And the only songs that she remembers is the religious songs that she grew up as a young Jewish child. And she starts singing these songs, and all of a sudden the people who had their newspapers that were peeled up to her head suddenly start dropping them down, and they start taking hands and they start putting money in her apron.
Wow.
And she realized something, that she had this phenomenal gift. And she went on to give this speech of how she connected the Israelis and the Arabics. And when she went in and talked to people who were on the life support, that when she started singing with this beautiful instrument that you just breathed onto, this beautiful harp, the lines would start going up, and you could hear that the kid were breathing, and there was respiration that was started from just the singing that she had gone ahead and done. And it was beautiful. And all three of her talks were about the magic and the beauty of music, and how it travels through rocks, and rocks can go ahead and feel the sound, just like the pings of people liking my pictures on Instagram. That's the pinging. They're going, yeah, that's right, Rosalyn, that's right. You get some amazing pictures. And it was just beautiful. And so I'd say to anybody who wants to be a TED speaker is to go and look at the TED Talks that are out there and ask yourself, what kind of message is there that I could do that's different,
Yeah.
that's unique? And, actually, I'm so glad that you asked me that, because in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be speaking at a Coach Masters group, and they've asked me to talk about that experience of being on a TEDx stage. So if there's any friends here in England who would love to join that meeting, it's Coach Masters. There's a public speaking group. And when you go onto the Coach Masters page, you will see one of my 188 interviews about reducing stress with Rosalyn Kahn. So it's
that is what we need right now, isn't it, Rosalyn? That's
it is so true. And I'm so grateful that you took the time out of yourself to realize at the beginning of the year that there was a huge need. And I like the fact that you help authors and writers and people who are too busy like myself to do what needs to be done by helping them. But you began seeing the stories, and we all get these messages.
Yeah.
And we get these messages in our heart. And I hope the leaders are listening out there, because they tell us things, but so many times we let the external world push them away and quiet them down and not listen. And it was the gift that you began listening and seeing that there was a message in the world. You were talking about the Mindset Memo with Robert Dial, and he had put out this thing talking about if the pandemic brought us good or brought it bad. And I would say, a lot of the research here in the United States has gone ahead and shown, a member of a global society of female executives and the director, Robbie Motter, says there are more people who've made money and been more successful. I was at a strategic alliance. I don't know if that's where we connected, or the Woman on podcast. And so many of those people are just of such giving hearts, wanting to help other people out and to share their message with the world. And, if we just stop a moment and reflect.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think, like we were talking about before we actually started recording, it is just, there seems to be a shift in mindset, and that there seem to be more and more people coming to the forefront, like yourself, like many podcasts, YouTube channels, that are now about how can you improve yourself? What story have I got to tell that will inspire you? And really, my podcast, I just want to bring people on here that have got stories to tell. And you've
No, and
got so much. It's amazing.
It's the beauty of it. And if we look at this time, I know people, I mean, I myself have this book. I have several other books that I've thought about that are in my head. If you go to my Instagram, Rosalyn Kahn, you can see plenty of pictures of flowers and food and furry friends, which is my next book of how I survived the pandemic. And to me, it was an inspiration to boost my creativity. I love flowers. And if I go, let's see, this way.
There we go. You can see those. Beautiful. Love the colour.
The front of my yard, and they just bring me so much happiness. And I started doing decorations of flowers, doing potpourris and other things, and cooking and putting recipes up there. It's going to be a book like, you know, like chocolate and water coming together. We can learn languages. There's a woman I saw on Instagram who had learned how to do decorative flowers. I was with a Ventura women's professional group last night, and this lady talking about curling. If you wanted to pick up a new hobby, to learn a new language, it's giving people a time to sit together and eat with their family.
That's the thing, and it's reflecting, isn't it? And a lot of people who I've spoken to, friends, family, people I've met through, my podcasting and my business, they all say that the one lovely thing about it is reflecting, being mindful, reading books. And it sounds like you did exactly the same thing, and that it really benefits you that way.
It's just really taking out the time. And I got to come back to that gratitude. If we all just give gratitude each and every day when we get up, and I like to say, if I don't do it in the morning, do it several times. When you feel yourself getting beat up, is write down what you're grateful for. And a big message is about being mindful of really understanding it's there was a thing at the college I worked for, Los Angeles Community College District, and they gave some advice on mental awareness. And the first thing they said is, in your business and organization, you should have regular meetings where people get together and talk. And so every major disaster, whether it was the protests that were happening, or the uprising at the White House, or the changing of legislation for the DREAM Act, or whatever it was, our college president, who's in my book, her first name is Mary. I'll remember it, the last name at the end, but she's the president of LA City College, has a weekly podcast to the college, and just bringing people together and having a chance. And the second thing it said is to be conscious of what you're feeling, because in any day, I shared myself, it didn't start out as a very good one, but you take out the moments of gratitude, and with a little bit of shift, we can change what's going on there, and how we feel about it. And I believe there's a big, huge power of writing. You write down, you say it, you put it out there. I was on the Strategic Alliance, and I said, I, Rosalyn Kahn, wanted to do 50 podcasts. So if you know any friends or anyone hears this and would love to have me on their show, I'd love to be there. And I want to be an international author. And so being with you today in England, and yesterday with India, we're out there, Germany, Sweden, Norway.
It's fantastic. Podcasting, I just find it incredible. I'm still fascinated by it, being at the beginning of the journey, because it's networking. So you get to meet incredible people. So even just this experience for me is amazing.
Right.
Not only do I get to do that, but I get to then portray that to anyone that's listening to this, spreading a message. And then you find out, I'm in touch with other podcasters who will listen to this, and you may think, wow, Rosalyn Kahn, what a great message. I'm going to get her on. So it's networking in the most beautiful way.
Right. And knowing your message, I know other people that I can bring to you. And I was on Luis Coffey's show today, and they were talking about, automating things and getting things out. But the big thing I remember is 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. And so my message to you is, you want to have an impact. You want to keep this up and going for at least 2 years.
Okay.
To get your message out. And you said you were on your third show, and it's just growing and expanding. And I think with the mindset that you have, and the ideas of just always learning, and it's like, who do you know who could? The lady in India said, who do you know who could? And who do you know who could? And we've all got messages to share. And I think, as mentioned on a happy network that came out of Pennsylvania yesterday, I'm always on the move, and my husband says, "What are you doing? Do you ever work?" I am working. I am
This
working.
is
This
work.
is work. Do you ever get off that machine? And they were saying it's thanks to this that I was with a lady from China who said, I do business all over the world, and any people that you can introduce me to, I'm with a world leaders worldwide in Toastmasters and a project masters and a coach masters group. One of my best friends from an online business I have that helps people with their essential services joined my group from Dallas, Texas. And it all works. It
Yeah,
all works.
it does. It's just a great way of meeting people, great way of connecting, getting messages across. And sometimes you come across new information that you didn't realize was out there.
Yeah, I
Um,
was talking to someone yesterday from England who works in organizational change. Grant Kennedy is a tremendous person of change and development, and we were talking about the misnomers that were out there, and he was telling me what was happening in England of the immigrant communities who have been told misnomers or untruths that it was had meat products in it, or that it was going to change the DNA. And he said they're just lies. They're just lies. It's just strange. And here in the US they talk about it, putting stuff in your stems, in your changing your DNA and this, that, and the other. And it's all part of this anti-hysteria. The United States has been filled with lots of rhetoric that's not always true. And you've got to check where those resources come from to be able to fathom the truth from the fantasy that's out there.
there's
You
so
know?
many places now that you can gather information, which is a wonderful thing. I spoke about it with my husband on our first podcast about the wealth of knowledge that's out there on the internet. But you do
Right.
have to be
And
careful, don't you, about what is true, what are you being fed, what kind of conspiracy theories and things like that could be dangerous to people as well.
but I think one of the things I'm really grateful for England is the BBC has a past and a history. I had a student giving a speech on the truth and fallacies of President Trump. And he said one of the brighter lights was the BBC, who said, when you look at a movement and you look at what it's composed of, you look at the genesis of the idea of where it's coming from and this, that, and the other. And that's the way it had expressed this rally.
Yeah.
Fox Media on the other side of the world that has a different perspective. And the BBC, as long as I've been in education and academia, it's one of the greatest things. And I also used to travel in a group called Up With People. I was in a group called Cast E of 1985, and some of my greatest friends were from England. A lady by the name of Ruth is one of the wonderful warm spots I have of just knowing that this world is built of people all over the world, and everybody knows somebody.
Yeah.
And it's in this time that we really need to reach out and connect to people.
Yeah,
It's so
definitely.
true.
We can't physically travel to places as much, but we are so lucky that we've got this means of communication now. It
No,
certainly makes the world a nicer place, doesn't it, to see
oh, it it
people.
it it certainly does. And had it not been for the pandemic, I don't think you and I might even be connecting.
Do you
You
know what?
know?
I completely agree, because I think we would have been probably so focused on our local life, in our own towns, that you wouldn't have time to stop and think, perhaps I want to reach out further and find out,
Right.
research about
Yeah.
these other people out there who might be of benefit to send a message across that we really want to portray. But you
That is. I'm sorry, this thing is on my screen, but I'll just ignore it. So anyhow, it's so true, because there's a friend of mine, a guy who was a best man in my wedding, and he had a sister-in-law that was in Italy, and she had helped me many years ago when I was doing a book signing over there. I had a book signing that was over in Italy for Random Acts of Kindness or Change in the World. And she had got me a book signing there. And as the pandemic hit, I was curious as what was happening in Italy and how were they experiencing the pandemic and what had gone ahead and happened. And she was talking about the stores that had closed down and businesses that were no longer open, and the adversities that she had to face. And that was fascinating. There was a colleague of mine, I traveled enough with people. I reached out to her in Australia and she said, I got to get out of this place. I mean, you go out and you get tickets if you're not at this particular place, and you can exercise between X and Y. But she told me one of the beauties of it was there was a local restaurant or store that had put packages of food together that would give you the recipes of how you could have an international course of food that you could make at home and put all these things in a packet so that you could spend time cooking with your family. And she said she and a single woman would get together online and just share these beautiful meals, preparing them
Oh, I love that.
together.
That's just
And
thinking outside the box, isn't it? And thinking, how can I help people? It's not just, you may need some food, I'm going to supply you with the goods, but it's thinking how can they make this into a social occasion as well?
yeah, and it was just beautiful. So I just love hearing the stories of what people are doing in different parts of the world and how they're, you know, dealing with the pandemic. And the importance of exercise and fitness is really absolutely critical and key. And I was saying to someone yesterday, he said, I can't exercise as much. I said, well, you could do push-ups and sit-ups every morning. I mean, I have a whole routine I've done for my back because I've got arthritis in my back, and I make it a part of every day. And everybody can do push-ups and sit-ups.
Yeah.
You can run in place. And
There's so many things now. There's so many things that you can do. And I was going to say to you, because at the moment with, us here in the UK being back in lockdown and the children off school again, which has been quite a shock to many people, because there was a moment when everybody went back to school after Christmas for one
oh
day,
wow, oh wow,
and then that night on the Monday evening, there was an announcement at 8 o'clock in the evening, that the children would no longer be going to school, and it was probably going to be until the middle of February before they could even look at going back. So, like we were talking about before, children's mental health is suffering. I notice it with my daughter. She talks about getting into her pajamas a lot more than normal. So I worry about her a bit. And this book, Message for Tomorrow's Leaders,
I
looking
think
at
it's
it.
really it really gives people inspiration, because here in the United States, I remember I was in my classroom and I can see it in my head. I was in class and all of a sudden get this text in the class. I also take a law class. I'm learning the law and the paralegal. And she said, oh my God, we just got a message. Um, we're not going to be in school next week, and we're going to be going online. And what we did in the US is they had a week. We were off a week, and everyone who didn't know how to do online learning had a crash course on how to do online learning.
Wow.
And within a week, we were back up and operational. And
So the fact
I
they
had,
gave him a course was quite amazing. Uh,
yeah, and I had done some things with my students that I would highly suggest to anybody who's listening to this podcast. Is I had my students create a dream board
okay.
and take pictures out of magazines, out of newspapers, of where you'd like to be or what you'd like to do by the end of this year. Don't just say when this is over. Look at 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, 12 months, and put a dream board together of those dreams, those goals, and those ideas. And they really work. I was in a group that was called Frontier Training.
Yeah.
And I remember that one of the things I had said was that I was going to read a book, write a book. I was going to be in Italy. I was going to do something in fashion. And I've done some modeling. You can see that on my Facebook and my Instagram page.
Wow.
And I did speak in Italy, and I did do a book signing in Italy. And I got
That's
some beautiful
amazing.
dresses that were customized and made for
Yeah.
me. And the other thing is there's lots of things on the internet of 101 ways. And I gave my student extra credit for just going and doing one of those 101 things. And
Those blog posts that you see. And what going back to what you were saying about that you projected out there, right, I want to be in Italy, I want to write a book, I want to be in fashion. To me, I talk a lot about the law of attraction and, like for like, what you what you put out there, the ideas that you think about, and if you really believe them, they seem to they do seem to happen. It seems to be like it does seem to be a
well,
law, doesn't it?
yeah, there's a lot of, I remember there was a mentor in life. He said, it's one thing to have it in your head, but it's another thing to share it with the world. And if you sit down and you tell your family each and every day, what was the greatest thing that happened? I had this wonderful interview with Sarah Graham, and I reached the market of England today, and I couldn't go to sleep last night because I kept on thinking I'm going to be in India in the morning and England at night. What is tomorrow going to bring? I'm
Yeah.
going to Hawaii this weekend, and how excited I am about that. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just, in everything that happens, there are things to celebrate. And so often our mind is trained for the id or the ego to look at what's wrong.
They say that there's a guy, I can't remember his name. He's a really good life coach online. I must look him up and send you the link, and I'll put the link out for anyone listening as well. And he talks about how the brain is actually wired to protect you by being fearful and negative. Because if you're relaxed and you're having fun and you're happy, then you're not on guard, ready for any kind of threats. And I guess that goes back to the days when, we were chased by lions, living
Oh
in
yeah,
caves.
it was interesting. I was working with this guy in India that's a friend of mine. His name is Varma, and he's part of BNI and Toastmasters. And he had me in this speakology thing, and I had this lady who was trying to get out the words.
Yeah.
And I said, let me make a suggestion to you. I want you to talk about something you love. I know that you just recently came back from Canada, and I want you to tell me the time in Canada. And the words just flowed and they came out just like magic and eloquence. And she paused and she said, secret. When you talk about things you love, the words flow.
Something that means something to you.
About
Yeah.
something that doesn't, we're looking at that right word. We're looking at how do we say this? How do we make sense of it? And that's the beauty of language. When you know a language, it just comes from inside.
And you do coaching, don't you, for people who
Yeah,
want
I
to?
coach people on stages. I have a young lady today at 3 o'clock who's going to be, she's a Filipino, and she's going to be in a beauty pageant. And her mom wanted to work with me to help her on gaining her confidence and becoming a more confident speaker. Last semester, I was saying I had a student in my class, and there was a competition on the college, and my college had my high school student win as the best speaker there. And I thought, wow,
Wow. And I take
that's
it
what I
that was
can
one
do.
of your students.
That was one of my students. And then
Hey.
there was the time that I had fractured my wrist, and I entered in school with a cast on my arm. And I say, I might not be able to write with this right hand, but I've got a brain, and all I need is this right here. And if you're in my class, I know that one of you in this class is going to be a winner. And for the next year and a half, my students came in first, second, or third place for several years in a row.
Fantastic.
And
It sounds like you're a really passionate teacher from what you've explained. It sounds like you
well,
love that profession.
I love inspiring and teaching people. I say that, if you're the right student who comes to the classroom and who wants to learn
Yeah.
and is not afraid of a challenge, I'm there for you.
Fantastic.
And I can make it happen.
Fantastic.
So,
And I think it's, these days when children, are at home learning, or they're a bit more distant at school, sitting further apart, and they feel less social, I think having a teacher like you there who's passionate, who wants to talk to them, wants to celebrate the students' loves and passions themselves. I just think that will help so much. And have you got any tips for
Yes.
parents? Obviously, you talked about your 101 things to do and the dream board. What about parents at home now that are homeschooling?
Well, I think for parents who are homeschooling, one of the difficulties is the challenge of the space. You know, you got three kids and three computers, and and my capabilities, sometimes the kid had to share the computer with the mom, and I never got to see them. And it would be, you want to have a schedule, a normal schedule that, you know, yes, school only starts at this, but we're still going to get up and we're going to have breakfast together. What's really important is that we have that breakfast together. And maybe we do our exercises together and we say how grateful we are. We do family reading. And now that we're at home, it's really the time to spend helping your kids out on the challenges or the difficulties that they have. But I think the most important lesson out of everything is taking time away,
Yeah.
where mom and dad isn't working and the kid isn't working on school, but you do something together as a family. There was a gentleman that I was talking to, his name is Shane Borsa, and he and I were talking about it, some twins that they had kind of adopted,
Yeah.
came from a broken home, and how they spent time together as the family cooking, and how cooking is a bond that really brings people together. You can't talk about geometry, math, and problems, but how much sugar do we need? And do we stir this and that? And he said it became such a memorable thing that when the kid went away to college, he called him up one day and he says, I'm coming back in town and I put my schedule together just so I could make sure that I could continue those meals that I had with you.
Oh,
And it shows the value of spending time with the family and cooking. Or maybe there's a special project. I know my nephew is really into building and electronics and things like that. If you have a boy, maybe there's some electronics or computer thing that you can work with them, or help them build an app on the computer.
yeah.
And the big thing is not letting your kids spend all day on the phone, all day on the computer, all day on social media, because the worst thing is to compare.
Yeah.
And you're great as you are of yourself. And as soon as we start looking at, the other people are out there and what they're going ahead and doing, we begin to think less of ourselves. And, I would just say, as we go around that family dinner table at night, is giving each kid a different message of how valuable and important they are. I like, Johnny, the time and the effort and the dedication you put on working on that project. I could see your frustration, and what impressed me is that you kept working and you kept on, and that is so important. And Susie, the fact that you were working on science. And Susie, I want you to know that you can be anything that you want to be, and the fact that you're looking in that's a perfect occupation for you. And you know
That's amazing.
mom, it's the wife, it's this is a great dinner, but I want you all to know that your wife is also a social media expert, and the time that we allow her to do that, gives her the time that she can be valued for her multiplicity of skills. And dad, it's great that you're not traveling the world,
Yeah.
that we get to spend time together and chat and have conversations. I think these are golden opportunities for us to reframe our life. I know a lot of people here in the States are moving to places where the cost of living is less because they don't have to commute to the workplace.
Yeah.
And there's major changes that are happening, and people need to think about, well, what is there in my life? It takes 60 to 90 days to create a habit that you can make as a part of you that you want to continue for the future.
So, Rosalyn, Thank you so much for giving us all the insights into the people that you know, the people you've met who have, given you such inspiration. And I know that myself and the listeners have been inspired as well. So what advice or what gift can you offer us, or to our youth of society at the end of this podcast?
Well, one of the biggest things I want to offer them, I want to give you this following message, and then I'll tell you my gift. I found this online when I was looking for inspirational quotes, and I put in the word hope in it. It said, hope is being able to see that there is, despite all of the darkness. And I think this is a mantra for all of us to think about every day.
Yeah.
There is good and bad. And what is it that you can celebrate each and every day? And secondly, for all your listeners for tuning into this wonderful show and gratitude for what you've done, if any listener to Sarah Graham's podcast will send me an email message to kahn.rosalyn, KAHN.ROSALYN @gmail.com, they will be able to get a link to get the first book that I wrote, Random Acts of Kindness, and
wow.
as my gift to them. And anyone who wishes to follow me can find me on Instagram. I have a show there. It's called Rosalyn Kahn. It's a community of unity, bringing our world together in the times that we have. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And any way they want to reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to help anybody. If they want any help in the art of speaking or coaching, I'm here and I'm at your service. And I thank you so much for reaching out to me so that we can make this possible, so we could travel across the globe and help the listeners in England as well as the ones here in the United States.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what a wonderful gift that you've offered people there. Please do take Rosalyn up on that gift, because that's beautiful. And people will be able to learn so much from their free book that you're offering them. That's so generous. And, really apt for the sort of person that you've come across as on this podcast. It's been a real pleasure to have you on, Rosalyn. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Gratitude beyond words. And at the end of every meditation, we say the words, Namaste. Have a bright and beautiful day. I look forward to talking with you soon. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rosalyn. Really looking forward to speaking to you again one day.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Wow, thank you so much to Rosalyn there for joining me. That was such a great interview, and really great to listen to her story and be in the presence of somebody who's just has so much experience. I really thoroughly enjoyed that, and just count myself lucky that Rosalyn wanted to be on the podcast. So thank you so much again. And I really hope that you are able to get in contact with Rosalyn and get that gift that she's offered to all of you, because that's such a generous thing that she has offered. So next week it's going to be me, actually. This is the first podcast with just me since really the first ever trailer that I released. And what I want to do is I'm going to be reflecting. So my word of the week is going to be reflection. I'm going to reflect on some of the people we've spoken to so far, and what kind of characteristics, what kind of influences that they all have to make them successful. Let's look back, let's actively learn about these people and how we can adopt these ways of life to really help us. So I'm really looking forward to recording that and to sharing what I've picked up with you, and you can then hopefully enjoy that and implement that into your own lifestyle. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next week for episode 7. Why not visit us at virtuallyminded.co.uk to find out all about our virtual assistant service, mindset coaching, and here you can also find all of our podcast episodes. You can also search for Virtually Minded on Instagram and Facebook, and join our Facebook group where we share resources about each of our episodes. Keep tuning in, and I'll see you next week on Virtually Minded, creating success in a changing world.